we get into this, let's take a minute to realize where we are. The TV show Cops was canceled because one member of the profession featured on the show was charged with murder. Aunt Jemima was canceled for being a racist African-American product, despite the fact that it was more popular among African Americans than any other race. The Washington Redskins name was canceled as well, despite between 70 and 90% of Native Americans not finding the name offensive. The Dixie Chicks name was canceled, despite no one in America knowing they were still a band. Needless to say, we kind of live in sensitive times. I'm not sure if you've noticed that. So then why does a man who has expressed outward admiration of a famous KKK leader continue to be allowed to represent one of the two major parties in the United States as its presidential nominee? I'm talking, of course, about Joe Biden, the man chosen to eulogize Robert C. Byrd, former KKK leader. You can only assume that the C stood for Caucasian. Robert Byrd wasn't just a KKK leader, but he was a KKK recruiter. Think about that for a second. He convinced other people to join the KKK. He went to people that didn't think it was a good idea to join the KKK before and convinced them that it was a good time to join now. This is the man that Joe Biden eulogized. How would you summarize a life like that?
The remarkable thing about him is he traveled a hard path. He devoted his life, though, to making that path a little easier for those who follow. This is a guy who continued to taste and smell and feel the suffering of the people of his state. He tasted it. That's why it was so deeply ingrained in him.
Robert Byrd sure seemed like he enjoyed the taste of certain people's suffering. Of course, Byrd wasn't always in the KKK. He eventually left as it became a tad unfashionable. But he didn't let that stop him. He continued to fight for his white supremacist ideas. 2 years after leaving the KKK, he wrote in a letter, quote, "Rather I should die 1,000 times and see Old Glory trampled in the dirt, never to rise again, than to see this beloved land of ours become degraded by race mongrels." End quote. Just because he left the Klan, he wouldn't give up. The fact that he always fought for his principles was something that Joe Biden truly admired, as he noted while specifically referring to Byrd's early years.
Having to work at an early age, he had an incredible determination.
Yes, he sure was determined, I'll say that. In fact, he set records for his determination. He led an 83-day filibuster against the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and even ranted for a record-breaking 14 hours against civil rights. Among his ranting was supposed scientific evidence about how black people's brains were smaller, proving they were inferior. He had strong principles, and he fought hard for them. That might be what Joe Biden admired most.
But ladies and gentlemen, of course, it's more than the name we're not going to forget. It's his courage.
Oh, courage.
He died like he lived. He died like he lived his life. He never stopped fighting. How many people would have hung on as long as he did? How many people would have had the ability to get back out of that hospital bed and get in a wheelchair and come in and vote for this? He never stopped thinking about his people.
Thinking of his people. Interesting thing to praise there, Joe. Some people would look back at this record and say it was, racist. Some would say prejudiced. Some would, I would guess, use the term incredible esteem.
If you didn't already know it, it's pretty clear the incredible esteem your father was held in. I know you've known that your whole life.
Oh, I'm sure you have. Look, a record like that does not deserve incredible esteem, but then again, I'm not a member of the party of the KKK, and I've never been invited to wax poetic about a KKK recruiter. Perhaps I don't understand the culture. Eventually, Robert Byrd would mention that perhaps the KKK wasn't such a good idea. And to be fair, it only took him over a half-century to deliver these deeply principled words of guidance to younger politicians about the KKK. Quote, "Don't get that albatross around your neck. Once you've made that mistake, you inhibit your operations in the political arena." As you can see, he definitely didn't abandon the public face of racism for political expediency. Of course not. He really meant that, everybody.